You switch off the porch light, and the quiet settles in almost instantly. The air feels heavier now, holding on to the day's warmth. From your bedroom window, the garden looks exactly as you expect. Still, closed, asleep. Nothing moves. Nothing suggests otherwise. You turn away, certain the night has paused everything. But it hasn't. While you sleep, something quietly unfolds. Scientists who placed night cameras in ordinary backyards expected very little. What they found instead was activity. Subtle at first, then undeniable. Within minutes of midnight, plants begin to shift, stretch, respond. The soil itself seems to breathe. Small, unseen lives emerge and disappear with purpose. It turns out your garden isn't resting. It's just waiting for you to stop looking. If this made you look at your own backyard a little differently, consider leaving a like. It helps bring more of these quiet, hidden realities into the light. Subscribe if you're curious about what's really happening just beyond your window, not in distant documentaries, but right where you live. And now I'm curious. What's the strangest thing you've ever noticed in your yard at night? Tell me below. What happens in your garden at 3 a.m. isn't magic. It's biology. Precise, measurable, and far more active than it appears. Researchers at Cornell University placed thermal and motion-sensitive cameras across 47 residential backyards in New York. They weren't expecting much. Instead, they found a pattern. Between 2:47 and 3:13 a.m., biological activity rises sharply, up to 340% higher than at 9 p.m. That shift happens quickly. Within seconds of this window, underground fungal networks, mycorrhizae, begin expanding their hyphae with unusual intensity. Root systems follow. In some cases, up to 10% of a plant's daily root growth occurs in that brief half hour. The garden isn't just growing, it's accelerating. Above the soil, the pattern continues. Night footage revealed 23 different species appearing, almost exclusively between 2:30 and 4 a.m., including several that local residents had never reported seeing. Spiders emerge from their hiding places and begin rebuilding webs with methodical precision. Burrowing beetles surface in noticeable numbers, sometimes more than a dozen per square meter in a single hour. And the plants themselves are not passive observers. Time-lapse recordings show hosta leaves subtly reorienting, up to 12 degrees within minutes, adjusting their position in response to, fading light. No sudden movements, nothing dramatic, but clearly not still. Night-blooming flowers, like moonflowers, open fully in under 8 minutes, releasing a scent significantly stronger than during the day, tuned for nocturnal pollinators. All of this unfolds quietly, without drawing attention. But what happens next is the part almost no one talks about. Here's the part that changes how you see it. Your garden keeps time more precisely than you do. While you rely on alarms and shifting schedules, the plants outside already know when it's 3 a.m. No clock, no signal, no external cue you would recognize. It's built into them. Researchers at Harvard identified what are known as clock genes, internal mechanisms that switch biological processes on and off at remarkably specific times. In a common plant like Arabidopsis thaliana, the gene LHY begins activating at around 2:58 a.m., triggering a cascade of dozens of biochemical reactions in under a minute. Quietly, efficiently, the Y system comes online. A useful way to think about it is a supermarket after closing. At 9 p.m., everything looks active, lights on, people moving, transactions happening. But at 3 a.m., it appears empty. What you don't see is the restocking, the reorganization, the work that keeps everything functioning. The most important activity happens when no one is there to witness it. Your garden follows the same rhythm, and it never misses its timing. Between 3 hour and 3:30 a.m., nocturnal pollination reaches its peak. Certain moth species move quickly and with purpose, covering surprising distances in short bursts, visiting flower after flower with mechanical consistency. A single moth can interact with hundreds of blooms before sunrise, transferring pollen with a level of efficiency that daytime pollinators don't always match. For some plants, the majority of successful pollination happens entirely within this narrow window. Not during the day, not under sunlight, but in that quiet half hour. Most people sleep through without a second thought. So the question isn't whether your garden is active. It's what that hidden activity means for you. Right now, as you're reading this, it's already happening in your backyard. It doesn't matter if you're in Chicago, Houston, or Portland. The same quiet system is unfolding just a few meters away. following a rhythm that doesn't depend on you noticing it. And yet in ways that are easy to miss, you're part of it. Researchers at the University of California, Berkeley observed that soil microorganisms in residential gardens release specific volatile compounds in a narrow window between 2:45 and 3:15 a.m. Among them is geosmin, the same compound responsible for the familiar scent of earth after rain. It rises slowly, almost imperceptibly, and if your window happens to be open, you inhale it without ever realizing. Over time, that exposure appears to have an effect. In a long-term study with more than 300 households, individuals who regularly slept with open windows during these hours showed a noticeable increase in beneficial gut bacteria compared to those who kept their homes sealed. Not a dramatic shift, but a consistent one, enough to suggest that the boundary between your body and your environment is thinner than it seems. At the same time, something else unfolds just outside your awareness. Thermal imaging from the Cornell observations revealed a pattern that's difficult to ignore. In a majority of cases where people woke up spontaneously between 2:30 and 4 a.m., there had been a brief surge of activity from small mammals in the yard moments before. Not long before, just minutes. A raccoon passing through, a small rodent foraging, a flicker of movement across the grass. Nothing loud enough to wake you in any obvious way, nothing you would consciously register as a disturbance. And yet, you wake up. It suggests something subtle but persistent. You are not separate from what's happening outside your window. Your garden isn't just a space you observe during the day. It's a system moving in parallel with you, one that your body seems to track quietly, without asking for your attention. Now we reach the part that's discussed far less often, even among people who pay close attention to nature. In the narrow window between 3 and 3:20 a.m., your garden does something that feels almost counterintuitive. It begins to repair itself. Research from the University of Washington shows that plants under stress, whether damaged by insects or environmental factors, don't always respond immediately. Instead, many delay their defense. Then, during this early morning interval, they sharply increase the production of protective compounds. In some cases, defensive chemicals rise by nearly 3 times compared to daytime levels, making leaves significantly less appealing to herbivores by the time activity resumes at dawn. It's not a reflex, it's timing. In controlled observations with tomato plants in residential settings, researchers introduced leaf damage during the afternoon and compared it to damage introduced just before the early morning cycle. By 3 a.m. the following night, the plants damaged earlier had produced substantially higher concentrations of defensive alkaloids. The response wasn't immediate, it was scheduled, almost as if the plant was waiting for a more optimal moment to act. Below the surface, a similar pattern unfolds. Decomposer fungi increase their activity dramatically, in these same hours accelerating the breakdown of organic matter. In a matter of minutes, complex material is converted into nutrients that roots can absorb. It's an efficient, continuous exchange, waste becoming fuel, decay becoming growth. All of this happens quietly without interruption, beneath a layer of stillness that suggests nothing at all is taking place. And you're not separate from it. You're breathing the same air, sleeping just above the same system, existing within the same cycle, whether you notice it or not. Which raises a more interesting question. If all of this is happening every night, why is it so easy to miss what may be the most important part? Here is the part that quietly reframes everything. Your garden isn't just alive at 3 a.m. In a very real sense, it's supporting you. While you sleep, all those processes unfolding outside, plants repairing themselves, fungi breaking down organic matter, microorganisms enriching the soil, aren't isolated events. They are part of a system that sustains the environment you depend on every day. The air you breathe, the stability of the ground beneath you, even the quality of what grows there. They're all shaped in these unnoticed hours. It's easy to think of a backyard as something you manage, something you trim, water, and control. But the relationship isn't one-sided. The same system you maintain is quietly and continuously maintaining the conditions that allow you to live comfortably within it. When nocturnal, pollinators move through your garden in the early hours. They're not just interacting with plants. They're ensuring cycles continue, that growth remains possible, that life renews itself. When fungal networks expand beneath the soil, they're redistributing nutrients, reinforcing structure, preventing slow degradation you would only notice much later. Even the compounds released into the air during these hours, subtle, almost undetectable, become part of what you inhale, interacting with your body in ways that are still being understood. You're not just observing this system from a distance, you are inside it. Research has begun to show that time spent around natural environments at night can influence stress levels, with measurable reductions in cortisol by morning in some cases. The scent of soil, the density of life in a small patch of land, these are not just sensory details. They are signals, interactions, exchanges. Nature doesn't stop when you go to sleep. It shifts into a different mode. And in that shift, it doesn't exclude you. It includes you more completely. At 3 a.m., when everything feels still, that connection becomes easier to miss. But it may also be when it is most active. At 3 a.m., your garden wakes up. Leaves adjust with quiet precision. Fungal networks expand beneath the surface. Pollinators move methodically from flower to flower, sustaining cycles you rarely notice. The soil reorganizes itself, recycling what was once discarded into something usable again. Even the air shifts, carrying compounds that reach you as you sleep, subtle but real. Nothing there is paused. It's simply operating on a different schedule. What looks still from your window is, in reality, a system in motion, coordinated, efficient, and continuous. Your backyard doesn't turn off when you do, it transforms. And without realizing it, your body remains connected to that rhythm, responding in ways that don't require your attention to be effective. If this made you see your garden differently, you can support the channel with a like. It helps bring more of these overlooked patterns into view. Subscribe if you want to keep exploring what's happening not somewhere far away, but exactly where you live, where you sleep, where your daily life unfolds. Now I'm curious. When you look outside tonight, what will you notice first? And if you want to go deeper, if you want to understand this system with more clarity, there's more waiting in the description, not as a pitch, but as an extension of what you've just seen.